Welcome to Motherhood Unfiltered, Straight Shots, No Chases. Let's get into today's episode, Navigating Parenthood Alone as a Teen Mom. Okay, guys, I'm going to bring someone very, very special and dear to my heart today. It is my cousin. I say little cousin, but we're really close to the same age, but you'll see why in a minute. Uh, she's compact and I'm a giant, so I'm going to bring her on, my cousin Bianca Nicole. All right, so I have my cousin here, Bianca Nicole. She's a mom, she's a school counselor, she's a wonderful daughter, and a community activist. She loves working in our communities in Nashville. She's very active in the Boys and Girls Club. So, welcome on.
Hello there, Brooke.
Hello. All right. Welcome, cousin.
Thank you.
All right. So before we get into this episode, we have to start with our toast. And I always let the guests choose what are we going to toast to for this episode?
We're going to toast to truly living in our soft woman era, as well as prosperity, love in all aspects, and just joy.
I like it. Well, cheers to that.
Cheers.
All right, so tell us a little bit about your journey to single motherhood.
Oh, journey. Okay. I wouldn't say it was a journey. I would say I was thrusted there.
Okay.
I did become a mom at 17. And so I would say we were high school sweethearts, I guess. He was my boyfriend in high school at the time. And so we were dating. And, to be honest, now as an adult, at that time, I had an uncle that was murdered. And so I think that is what led me to begin to be sexually active. Now that I can look back on it as an adult, I think I was looking for comfort and I was looking for like some sort of out to what was happening around me. So I did begin to be sexually active, and then I ended up pregnant. Okay. So I wouldn't necessarily call it a journey. I don't think I really knew what I was doing, but you know what you're doing, but I didn't know that it would turn out this way. So let me say that. So I was 17 years old. I had just graduated. I knew I was pregnant before I graduated, but I didn't say anything. And so I began to prepare myself to go away to college. In my mind, I was going to the University of Memphis, and I was going to go. And I guess I just believed if I didn't talk about it, it'll go away. And it didn't go away. And it wasn't until my mom, she called me out and she was like, "Girl, you're going to go to the doctor. Like, I already know that you're pregnant, so you're going to go to the doctor." And so my first time going to the doctor, I was about 6 months pregnant. And here we go.
Moms and grandmas always know. Like, how did your mom know? How do you think that she knew?
She said, so my mom and dad together, there are 4 of us. And so there are 3 girls and 1 boy. And she said she knew because I was not using any sanitary napkins. So she was just like, she paid attention because I hadn't been in the restroom using any, pads or tampons or anything like that. So looking back on it now, it's just kind of like, hey, I kind of had it. But in my mind, like I said, I was like, yeah, I'm not pregnant. Because to be frank, I believe that I was still spotting a little bit. And I cheered. I was really little. So I was like, yeah, this is not happening. I'm compact now, but I was really little then. So I was just like, yeah, I'm not pregnant. I'm not having a kid. So it is what it is. So that's how she said she knew.
I remember the day that you told me, and you had come to my mom's house. And what was I flat out of your hair?
I don't remember. I think I was so traumatized. There's some things I don't remember. I remember going to Grandma Helen's house and telling her. And when I told her, I remember what she said to me. And then there's not much about me. I just remember her reaction and then my dad's reaction. Those are the only two reactions that I remember.
I remember you like, hi, Brooke, I gotta tell you something. I think I was like one of the first few to know, and I was like, what is it? And you told me, and I don't know, I think I just embraced you, and I was just like, what? Like, cause like I said, you are my, little cousin by what, a year and a half. But to me, because you're so small, you were like my baby. And I was just like, what? I'm just like, okay, we're gonna get through this. But I remember going in like to full planning mode, doing baby showers.
I remember like I don't remember much about like telling people. And like I said, I remember Grandma Helen, but I remember you telling me like, I'm planning you a baby shower. And I felt so shamed. I was like, no, I'm not supposed to have a baby shower. Yeah. Like, I'm a teenager. This is not something that should be glorified. Like, I vividly remember you and my older sister like setting up stuff. I do have those memories for sure.
Yeah, I know. Of course, in the Black community, and especially Christian community, right? Like you said, it's not glorified, but I just remember feeling like, no, we know that, this is a sin, but to continue to, beat it over someone's head and crucify them for it does nothing. The reality was a baby was coming, mm-hmm. and you were young. So we knew, okay, we needed to support you and make sure that you and Jalen had what you needed. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think now, like as a full adult and just looking back on it, I will say I don't ever remember my mom saying anything mean to me. Because again, I think she already knew, and I think she had kind of like made it up in her mind and come to grips with it. And so I remember her and Auntie Chris at the house, I believe, when I came back from the doctor. Now, keep in mind, I was a nervous wreck. I remember running over cones, leaving the hospital. There were like cones in the street, and I had like ran over the cones because I just couldn't believe it. Like, it was my first time at the doctor. In the ultrasound, it was a penis there, and they were like, you're having a boy. This is what this is. So there was no time to be, okay, what am I going to do? Like, either keep the baby or option were the only other options that I had at that point. But I do remember like my mom and our auntie just like being there when I got there. And I can just remember Auntie Chris taking me to the doctor. Taking me to Walgreens to get my prescription, and them cooking me some food. Like, you got to eat. You have not eaten. This baby ain't had vitamins in 6 months. Yeah, there's some things I remember and some I don't.
I could understand that. Yeah. You just push her back. It was so much going on that, yeah. Okay, I remember something that stood out to me. You were always big on having like a community or creating a community for Jalen. Like, where did that thought even come from, being so young? And how do you think it served you, throughout his childhood?
To be honest, I don't remember the thought. I can remember not really knowing much about God at that point, but just feeling a sense of it being something greater than me. And I can remember like maybe whispering small prayers, just the bare minimum of what I knew about God and spirituality. But I do remember the images that I would see about like my uncles, my dad, my brother, and my son's dad, and I knew what I didn't want him to become. And so I think if anything was a driving force for me, it was that. And so I can remember just like looking back, even just looking back at what Nashville used to be. And I remember vividly saying, I don't want him to grow up right here. And this is not what I want for his life. So that was my driving force. Like, he has to be better than me. He has to be better than what he's seen. And that's no discredit to the people that come before us. But at the same time, I'm a firm believer of like, everybody shouldn't have to get it out the mud. We all should not keep living with the same generational traumas and behaviors. And so I can remember saying to myself, he was such a sweet baby and kid. I knew that I had to do what I needed at all costs to like protect his spirit and to make sure that he was exposed to a lot of different things. And so when I got to a point where I knew without a doubt that his dad was not going to be there, then I knew like I have to surround him with as many men and people as possible. I'm a firm believer that women cannot shape or raise a man into a man, but I do believe that women can create within boys and men the sense of willingness and wants what a woman would want from a man. And
Okay.
so I can't teach you how to be a man, but I can teach you how to be a man that a woman would want. So I would encourage him to like open doors and I would do things like that. And so to be honest with you, a lot of our community fell in our lap. Like I knew what I wanted. And so
Mhm.
those small prayers, like even when he got to, past kindergarten, when he began to truly realize like his dad wasn't there, God just kind of threw in our lap a great group of young men at that point who were football players at Vanderbilt. And
Mm.
they just kind of took a liking to me and they became my brothers. And just looking back from him being 5 to now and watching them come to his graduation, he's always been their nephew and I've always been their sister. And so no matter which path they went in life, some of them went on to be professional athletes. They would always make sure whatever came with them, they would call and say, hey, if you need this, what does he need? My brother in law, for sure, without a doubt, was and is one of the closest men in his life to this day. And I just think like him seeing me trying, even though they were young and they were young and married, when my son turned 8, they were like, we're gonna take him for the summer because that was the first sense of unity that my son had, like in a family dynamic, living in a space with two people, although it's my sister and her husband at the time, but it still created an image in his head on what family units and dynamics look like. And so they would take him every summer up until he got to be about 18 years old. But then even from there, our church home at the time, if he didn't see my brother-in-law, he always saw our pastor. And so my brother-in-law and our bishop at the time were very consistent males that he saw. He knew he could see our bishop every Sunday. And when he would see my brother-in-law would call him and check on him. And even when he got to a place where he had a phone, I would check his phone and my brother-in-law would be checking on him like, hey buddy, how was your day? And so
Mhm.
we just got to different spaces where people would see his creativity. And I remember going to a Janelle Monáe concert, and then one of his mentors to this day, they saw him and how he loved music, and literally when Instagram was just becoming a thing, posted his face and was like, hey, does anybody know this kid? And our cousin Ashley was like, this guy is like talking about Jalen on, do you know him? And I was like, no, I don't know that man. And so he was asking people, like, if you know him, tell his mom to call me. And to
Wow.
this day, he was in the army and he went overseas. And from the time he was 9 until now, he hadn't missed a birthday. He didn't miss graduation. He didn't miss a drum recital. He saw something in him that he wanted to cultivate, and he's been there. So, like, we were really blessed with a lot of people that God kind of sent our way. Some we prayed for, and then others God knew what we needed. So, in different areas, from his drum instructor to his senior year, his internship, like he's made some really great relationships with men that God has just deposited in his life, whether it's from school, whether we randomly met people somewhere and those people ended up knowing different people that we knew, and so we knew they were safe people, down to his barber. Like his barber watched him in church, and so even when he comes back home, he's like, that's my boy, that's my baby, like text me, what you need, I'll cut your hair. And so it's just kind of always been that way. I would just give all credit to God for sure. And then there are some people that came because we just happened to be in the right space at the right time, and they
Mhm.
have some in them. So, but I do think just having the community around him, I don't think he would be half the young man that he is now without those men.
I've always just like been in awe of you because I mean you did it so young, and now as a mom, and I was a much older, mom than you when I had Anthony. Okay, so thinking back to your teenage years, what were some of the emotional highs, lows, and what was like one monumental like moment that was just like gratifying for you?
Um, for sure, an emotional low would be just when I realized that his dad wasn't going to be there. I
Mhm.
ended up having to go to jail. he spit on me. So I ended up losing my job and everything behind that. I think not only was it a personal low, but I can remember my son saying, "Mom, I'm gonna get a pool stick or something." He was saying, "I'm gonna get a pool stick and I'm not gonna let my dad do anything else to you." And so I remember that very vividly. I remember his voice. I can remember it's like riding down Jefferson Street when he said that. And so that for me was like a light bulb moment. I knew I didn't want to continue to like go back and forth with him because I didn't want him to experience that all the time.
Right.
In terms of highs, I feel like I've had a lot of high moments just raising my son. I can remember like him being little and trying to preach and like being able to pray while he was.
Love the Lord.
He just really loved God and just like being able to pray. But I would say, and this is like a recent moment. I wouldn't say it's the most defining moment, but it definitely watching him graduate high school and knowing that it could have been another way, but not just only him graduating. Like he ended up winning like Youth of the Year for Boys and Girls Club for our local chapter, and then he went on to win state, and then he went on in the region, and he ended up placing like number 2 in the nation. And so like just watching him and hearing him tell his story and being confident in that, and like watching people stand up and giving him standing ovations, not the fame of it, but them just hearing the things that they would say. Like there's no way that this boy was raised by a single mom. Just being in awe of like who he is and his character, and knowing that like there was no way I could have done it without God. And so like 2022, watching him graduate and just experiencing all of those highs and then dropping him off to college was definitely a moment that it still kind of makes me teary eyed, but it was, I just couldn't, it was surreal because it was like it was really there. He did it, I did it, we did it, and for him to only male on both sides of his family, like it's a major accomplishment. And so like, you know, it made me very proud and just grateful, to be honest.
I've always been just in awe of your strength, your courage, and just Jalen, like, he's just an exceptional kid. He always has been. I mean, I've been there from day one, and just I remember that day vividly in McDonald's, the little man standing in the chair and just preaching, and bringing people to God. When I love the Lord, you love the Lord. Everybody say amen. And I'm just like, who is this old man? But yeah, he's an exceptional kid. And I always tell you, I give you your flowers because I know it wasn't easy, and you did an amazing job. Amazing. So now that he is a young adult, what are some additional challenges that you find yourself facing now?
Ooh, child, honey, we be going toe to toe. I think the beauty of, like, I used to be so upset at myself that I had him so early, because I would be like, oh my God, I didn't get to, experience certain things that my friends did going off to college. And so now I see, like, we grew up together essentially. Like, he is my friend, but there's a very clear boundary that I'm still his mom. But now, like, I never heard of people say, like, they come home and that first summer is really hard. And it was, because we butted heads. And I think because not just me, but the both of us value our relationship so much. He will talk to his therapist. I talk to mine about like how we maneuver in this new space of like him being a young adult. And so I've had to be conscious and aware of like, hey, do you want me to just listen to you? Are you just venting? Do you want my opinion? Are you asking for advice? And then there's sometimes I just have to say that's stupid as hell and do that. Then this is the thing. So there's still places where I'm still being mom, but there are also still places where I have to let go and let him figure it out and fly on his own. And so it can be really difficult. Like, we had a conversation this past weekend, and there's a young lady friend that he's trying to date. And so I think just maneuvering in those spaces on like what that looks like, and trying to make sure I am not that mother that I had to experience by dating somebody's son. So I'm very conscious about those. And to be honest, it kind of scares me a little bit, because I do love him a great deal, but I also never want to hinder him or give somebody else the same experience that I had. So just navigating in the space of respecting him as being a young man, and respecting his voice is not little boy Jalen anymore, but still ensuring that like I don't just drop him and say you're an adult. I'm done with you.
All right. So, how did you approach the topic of like being a mom, a single mom with someone that you were dating, and like at what time frame within like meeting and dating someone did you bring that up?
So back then, I think I shied away from dating once I broke up and ended things with his dad for a while. And then when I did begin to date someone, he saw me with my son. So he already knew. And we dated for a long time at that point. And so he kind of always knew about him, but we did talk about it. And I think just being younger, my younger self, I was really embarrassed a little bit because I would always say, oh, there are other girls that you can date that don't have kids and don't come with all this baggage and crazy baby daddy and all this kind of stuff. So looking back on it now, I do feel like it was very hard to date, like being super young, trying to date, having a small child at that point, and think your partner at that point is young too. So I knew that there was definitely options, but I always made everybody aware like he is my number one priority, and I didn't waver on that. So, guy that I did date at the time, he embraced him and loved him. He was the only person to this day that my son ever lived with in a family dynamic. So we made it work for what we could at that time frame. I would say now, the gentleman that I'm dating now, I've always known him. So he has always known about my son. He knew him when he was really young from barbershop and just different places. So it wasn't really hard. If I went on dates with people, I didn't bring people around him. My son would spend the night at my mom's house like every weekend, literally. So I would go and hang out with people, but I didn't bring anybody around him. Now, if I've had male friends, I would be very clear to my son, like, hey, these are my friends, because I wanted him to know, like, these are not people your mom is dating and bringing in and out of this house. So they would sit and watch TV with us, or they would hang out with us, and the line was very clear. But when it came to me, like, dating in an intimate way, I would always communicate with my son because I wanted him to be comfortable too. And so I know that it is definitely about me, but especially when he was younger, his safety and his heart was my number one priority. And so now that he's older, he knows who he is. And so they have a great relationship. And it's just always been understood that I was his mom. And so it's just always been a respect level there. So it hasn't been as hard.
Okay, so if you could go back and give your teenage self any advice, what would it be?
I could go back and give my teenage self any piece of advice. It would be just believe. Knowing what I know now, I probably wouldn't have beat myself up as much. I would have given myself more grace. I would have loved myself a little better. And I would have probably let more people in because I know the beauty of community. I know the beauty of asking people to help and allowing people to love you through moments that you don't necessarily understand, as well as allowing people to see you mess up and to see you fail and just honestly just relax. I don't think I allowed myself enough grace or to cry enough to release a lot of the things that I was feeling because I felt so misunderstood. I would tell myself to cry more. I would tell myself to laugh more often. I would tell myself to relax a little bit more. And although I feel like I did a great job, I would still tell myself to hug my son more. I definitely don't think we lacked in any of those areas, but I don't think you know the importance of loving on small children until they are young adults. And so, although I feel like I did the very best that I can, I still think like those younger years are very pivotal in a child's life. And so, the more love you can give them, the better off that they will be. And so I would hug him every chance that I got. Although I did, I would still do that again. And so I would also hug myself too. I would literally wrap my arms around myself and hug myself more because I think just knowing to love yourself in a different way allows us to be better and to show up differently for our children.
All right, so that is it for this episode. Thank you so much for coming on. I know It took a lot to make this happen. We finally made it happen. The time differences, but woo, we made it happen. So let's take a toast and get on out of here. Cheers, 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 cheers to more life, more happiness, to being great moms, and to being my cousins that I love so much.
I love you.
All right. Mm. All right. Peace, y'all. We out.